Hey Andy, did you see the baby down the hall? It looks like our nurse Kathy's kiddo. Can't be older than 9 months old. Gosh, it goes so fast. From birth to toddlers, kids grow like weeds. First they learn to control their head, then they're sitting up, and sooner than later they're walking. One of my favorite parts is watching them begin to smile and understand their mother's voice, or even the funny faces that they make. I didn't particularly enjoy one part, though, as they had difficulty controlling their emotions and started to throw temper tantrums. Maybe that's why it's called the terrible twos. I think recently, Kathy was even talking about how it's become easier to drop the kiddo off at daycare as her separation anxiety has decreased. I remember in school they talked about this stage being called infancy, and Erickson, a psychologist, talked about trust and mistrust, and how in this stage the child learns that needs such as hunger will be met. Goodness, and before we know it, they're learning how to jump, run around, and kick a ball. It seems like they just don't quit growing. I heard between the ages of 2 to 6, children grow 3 inches and 4 to 5 pounds a year. They say during this time that children learn to represent words, imagine, and ideas. Social and emotional development, like egocentric speech, comes along, but the child still isn't focused on anyone else's but their own point of view. They go through many other changes at this time too, like the know stage, or beginning to understand others' feelings, and the development of shame or pride. They even start to play make-believe play like dress up. That reminds me, one of my favorite parts was that they understood directions better, like going to grab items from the table, bringing it to the sink, loading it in the dishwasher. My little helpers. Early in this stage, Erickson said that the child develops independence and will experience autonomy or shame and doubt depending on their independence. They then fall into the play stage where initiative versus guilt happens. Sometimes the child develops guilt when they are unsuccessful. That reminds me of our nurse Kathy's older son that was with her today in addition to the young one. They said he's in 5th grade. What a sweetheart he is. He doesn't seem to be growing like a weed anymore though. I think they slow down at this time of age. I think Kathy said now he enjoys things like baseball and swimming. They sure do like keeping her busy. At this age, I remember some people in my grade starting to have preference over their friends. That was nice, but I remember coming home to my mom after someone said something mean, as I was sensitive. My poor mom. I'd be upset when I came home, but then upset her by testing the rules. This would result in a consequence, but instead of breaking down and crying, I would be able to talk through the problems with her and others. Erickson said that this stage was called school age, where children develop industry versus inferiority. When they are successful with tasks, they develop confidence, and when they're not, they may feel inferior to their other peers. Before we know it, they start working here at the nursing home. I see a couple dietary aides help out for a few hours at night. I think many kiddos are busy with sports, but they may work jobs in the summer like babysitting or lifeguarding. During this age, if I recall, the friend group seemed to particularly be separated by gender, but later, towards the end, they become mixed again. I remember my mom saying how moody I could be at a time. I think of what Kathy's son might look like in a few years. I sure do get jealous of how easy they make it look to button, zip, and tie shoes. It seems like mine has only gotten worse. Erickson called this age adolescence and said that children begin to develop their own identity and roles. This may also lead them to engaging in riskier behavior as they go against their parents. I sure hope I wasn't like that. Geesh, Andy. I'm so sorry. I sure got awfully windy and went on for a while. What do you think about the later stages in life?
Ah, those childhood memories. Yes, so much learning. Oh, just wait till they get older. So many changes, but it is wonderful. Adulthood's where we put it all to good use. So many important moments, so many milestones. Here, let me show you some of mine. Well, here's us on our wedding day. How wonderful it was to have everyone around us that we loved. I chose intimacy over isolation right away, being married so young. I was only 20. It brought me a friend for life, though, and we had deeper relationships with our families. Just a wonderful time. And here's us in our first home. Ugh. Learning to adjust to financial responsibilities, getting involved a little bit in the community around us. It brought so many responsibilities, though. Life did seem a little unstable during those years with all the changes. And here's my first real job as a COTA. Ugh, I was so focused on career development during those years. I know for most it's parenting and caregiving, and as you know, we couldn't have children, but it made us focus on our careers a little bit more and leisure. We developed so many hobbies, and we were good at them because we were in our peak physical conditions during those years. And it seemed like our brains were functioning as well, just too. We could really think abstractly, and it seemed like we were able to do whatever we put our minds to. And then came middle adulthood. That's when my perspective seemed to shift, and I reevaluated my life's goals. Maybe it was a midlife crisis, but I seemed to focus more on how much time I had left and started doing more of what I really wanted. Here's me with my girls. You know I love my chickens. Caretaking for animals, having a prosperous garden so that I could give to others or help others in need. I also started passing on those skills to my nieces and nephews. Seems like I really took on Erickson's generativity over stagnation, huh? That's also when I went back to school. It seemed like I hit a ceiling as a COTA and I needed more. My cognitive functioning was as good as ever, and I needed a challenge and a change. I also started taking more care of my parents during those years. It was an unfortunate milestone, as it was difficult. It was hard to see them needing assistance. And then I began noticing my own decline as well, with arthritis and some other chronic conditions. It began taking me a little bit longer to process things, too. And finally, late adulthood. It was more of a challenge adjusting to retirement than I thought. Seemed like our purposes changed and money was more tight and our social circles changed. We ended up volunteering quite a bit to keep our purpose and stay active in the community. We did have fewer friends as a result, but that didn't matter because we focused more on the quality of relationships over the quantity. I think this time was Erickson's integrity versus despair, if I remember correctly. I could easily see the despair aspect and the increased loneliness, especially after losing my parents and then my husband. And I keep looking back now, but I have a sense of fulfillment. We kept up teaching our nieces and nephews and their children our own skills to pass on our knowledge, knowing we lived a good life and we're proud of our accomplishments. Now, age is getting to me. My strength and endurance isn't what it used to be, nor my balance, which is how I ended up here after a fall. And it's harder for me to process things. It seems like I can't multitask anymore. But, oh well, I can still care for myself for the most part, and I enjoy lots of leisure time and social interaction, just to a lesser degree than before. Life still has meaning. But, Kenzie, you know what ultimately comes next. Our end of life. I guess it reminds me of that song by Frank Sinatra. You remember, don't you? My Way. And now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. I know my emotions may be all over the place. There'll be fear of what'll happen next, sadness at the loss, frustration with all these others having to care for me. I won't be able to engage in my normal occupations. I'm sure I'll be reflecting more on my beliefs and my spirituality. My social skills and social participation may be at an end, but I likely won't remember much of what's going on. I'll likely be much weaker and have trouble moving how I want to. I can see how these thoughts could lead to despair, but it's our awareness of living a good life and holding on to our faith, and it'll only be a transition. There may be an even greater adventure ahead. Well, I do so appreciate you letting me ramble on like this. It's been wonderful talking to you.